Good morning, everyone. Looks like we got some extra faces out there, and we welcome you to our board meeting today. And this is the Swanee River Water Management District Governing Board meeting and public hearing. You can find us on YouTube, and it is July 8th at 9 a.m., 2025. We're going to call this meeting to order, and if everyone would rise, we're going to have our invocation and our pledge.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Father, we thank you for this time when we celebrate the creation of this great nation. Father, we pray for your hand to be upon us, that we somehow reestablish the biblical principles that this nation was founded on, the truth and the light. Father, we pray for your mighty hand to be upon us, your hedge of protection around this staff, this board, this district. Father, we praise you and love you for your kindness, your mercy, your grace that we don't deserve. Father, we just want to give you thanks today. Ask your blessing on this meeting as we conduct the business before us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, bear with us. We just got a little bit of paperwork and bookkeeping to do up here on the board. And the first thing we'll do is have a roll call.
Chair Johns,
Here.
Mr. Keith,
Here.
Mr. Schwab,
Here.
Mr. Smith,
Here.
Mr. Sessions,
Here.
Mr. Thompson, Mr. Lloyd,
Here.
Mr. Wheeler.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Robin. The first item we need to address is a vote or on a secretary-treasurer election. And is there a recommendation from the board?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to nominate Charles Keith to serve as Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you. Any other nominations? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you for serving, Mr. Keith. You do a good job. Then the next item are our governing board committee assignments. And I'm going to read out the ones that we have currently. And if there is any changes, additions, or deletions, we can address those at this meeting. The Lands Committee, the present members are Richard Schwab, Chair, Charles Keith, Larry Sessions, Harry Smith, Larry Thompson, and George Wheeler. Are there any deletions or additions that the board would like to make? If not, is there a vote to keep the members as they are?
Make the motion. Approved.
There's a motion, a second. We have here a second. We have a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you, members. The next committee is the Audit Committee. The present members are Virginia Johns, Chair, Charles Keith, Richard Schwab, William Lloyd, Larry Sessions. Are there any additions or deletions that we would like to do at this time? There being none, is there a vote to maintain the members as written?
Make that motion, Madam Chair.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. And the last committee we need to look at is the Executive Director Evaluation Performance Committee. The members are Virginia Johns, Chair, Charles Keith, Richard Schwab, Larry Sessions, and Larry Thompson. Are there any additions or deletions for that one? There being none, is there a motion to maintain those members?
Make that motion, Madam Chair.
Second it.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Robin, if you'll just go ahead and make that in our record. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, members. Okay, we will go on with our agenda. Are there any announcements or changes to our agenda?
Yes, ma'am, we have one deletion in Business and Community Services, Agenda Item 19, Resolution Number 2025-07, Release of Fiscal Year 2025-2026 State Appropriations.
All right, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Make that motion, Chair.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. All right, that brings us down to public comment. Again, the meeting is available on YouTube link for Swanee River Water Management District. And I am going to go through our cards. If you would like to speak at a different, instead of now, if you'd like to speak at a specific item, just let me know. Frank Futch.
I spoke with Mr. Fudge and he withdrew his public.
Okay, all right. Make note on that. Chad Richard. All righty. And Mark Hammond, same thing? Okay. I have an email. I don't know. Okay, just that's on record. I got it. Okay. Here. All right, that's all of the public comment cards I have, unless there's someone in the audience who would like to speak. Now would be a good time. All right, we will call up the speakers on number 27 when it comes around. Okay, at this time, we'll close public comment and go on to our collectively our consent agenda. And is there any comment or is there a
I'd like to make a
motion?
comment.
Okay.
On agenda item number 30, Hugh, who brought that to attention there? No, it's agenda item number 30, lease district lands for Perry leases.
You don't like
I
bees?
think it's actually 29, but.
Oh, is it 29? Okay, sorry about
It
that.
says 30, but it's.
It says 30. Anyways, I just wanted to clarify one thing. I had to use my handy dandy AI assistant to be able to define what a Perry is. So, if you guys don't mind, for those of us that are a little bit slower on the uptake, if you'll just kind of put in quote beekeeping, it'll be really good for me. The next time, I mean, I'm not against this by any means, but I just want to say that some of us on this board are a little bit slow and not as well educated as we should be. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. That's all I have to say about that.
Richard, if it makes you feel any better, I had to ask too.
What the heck are they trying to lease out here? Is it something that I'm not wearing? What the heck?
Oh, goodness.
And my AI assistant tried to correct the spelling about 5 times. They didn't know what it was to begin with either.
Either.
Finally, I got
That's
to the
AI
bottom of
for
it.
you.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. Any other comments on our consent agenda?
I make the motion that we approve it as written.
Okay. All right. And we have a motion and a second to accept the collective agenda as altered. Well, I guess our regular agenda was altered. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. All right. Item number 9. Do we have some cooperating agencies that you would like to address today, Hugh? All right.
We do have, DEP, we have Chris Rothenberg, and then also Katie Stevens.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you for coming today. All righty. Do you have a latecomer? All right, thank you. Mr. Quarterman, would you like to go ahead and speak? I mean, we kind of passed our public comment, but now would be a good time if you want to speak up.
Sure. Glad you still recognize me. Haven't been here in a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
That's right. John Quarterman, Sewanee Riverkeeper. First, I'd like to compliment you. Used to be the only way you guys got on YouTube was I stood in the back and people tripped over my tripod and then I stuck it on YouTube. But now you're doing it yourself.
How
Thank
about
you.
that?
Load off me. So I have a question for you. What's going on with the Manatee Springs gauge? I saw an alert that it was going to stop collecting pH and nitrate information. But when I go look at it, it's still graphing that. So is something going to stop there? And if so, why? That's my question.
Okay, I don't know whether,
Ms. Johns,
Yep.
that will be discussed at item number 32. We
okay.
have some updates from the USGS regarding their monitoring support.
Let me guess, it's financing, funding.
I don't want to
Okay,
give
I'll wait
anything
till
away in advance of item number 32.
I'll wait till then.
Okay, all right.
And this may be a popular topic. So back in 2015, y'all bought some property from Rayonier over near Trail Ridge. I think it's about part of its own Trail Ridge in Bradford County. And Rayonier retained the mineral rights. Now Rayonier's made a deal with Chemours to mine on that land. So I'm really puzzled. I thought y'all were in the business of conserving land and making it available for public access. So how did this happen, that y'all bought land where the mining rights were retained and now it's going to be mined? How is this conserving the land? And is there anything you can do? Because right now, there's a permit process. I'll forward you what we sent as our comments to the permit application comment period. Is there anything y'all can do to, maybe stop that permit? Because that'd be great, because I hope you're still in the business of conserving land. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All righty. So, we'll go on to our next item, which is, all right.
We're on the hydro report, Ms. Jones.
Oh, I'm sorry, I flipped over one too many pages. All right, our hydrologic report. I thought you were up next. You were just trying to hide back there.
Ma'am, don't forget about me, Madam Chair. All right, Madam Chair, members of the board, I'd like to present the hydrologic conditions report for June 2025. I'd like to thank Paul Donsky for this great picture that he sent over. He works for our MFL group. He was out collecting some data on that spring, and he took this photo of that little transition zone between the tannic water of the Sewanee and the nice clear water of the spring. You can kind of see that. I'll see if I can get this to work up here. Yeah, kind of in this area here. To me, that's one of the prettiest features of the springs, the interface with the river, just kind of how it kind of just, it does a oil and water kind of thing. It's a density thing. It's really pretty. It's one of my favorite things to see. And I think this is a great photo. I'd like to thank Paul for sending this over, and it's a great way to start our hydro report for June 2025. Rainfall for June 2025, we had a district-wide average of about 5.5 inches. That represents about 19% less than that long-term average of 6.8 inches. However, we did reduce our deficit slightly. We went from 3.3 inches of rainfall deficit at the end of May to a deficit of just under an inch of rainfall, 0.96 at the end of June. Reason being is June of 2024, we had a rainfall amount of 3.1 inches. Moving that window of time forward, we picked up 5.5 inches. So it helped to ameliorate that a little bit. All right, taking a look at the map, that 5 to 7 inch range encompasses that district-wide average for the month. And I really wanted to point out mostly the rain kind of occurred along our coast, Jefferson County, Taylor County, Dixie County, Levy County, even up into Lafayette and Gilchrist. all had that average amount or higher of rainfall. Lesser than average amounts for the month, 3 to 5 inches in that first category in dark blue, and then the light blue was less than 3 inches. We see a lot of that up north and then kind of center part of the district and then over into the eastern part of our district as well. On the flip side of that, 7 to 9 inches of rainfall in the orange color. Once again, kind of concentrated here along this area, but we did see some over in this area as well. And then we did have some portions of our district that got more than 9 inches of rainfall, and that was in that red color. Levy County, Dixie County, up into Lafayette, Taylor had a spot, and then over into Union and Gilchrist, they all showed areas of more than 9 inches. I did want to point out, too, that the couple spots in Levy County actually got double digits of rainfall for the month. Those two red spots right there were upwards of 9.5 to 10 inches of rainfall. So quite a bit fell, but it wasn't really very uniform in our district for June. With that said, this is a departure from normal precipitation. This is from the 7th of June to the 6th of July. What we're seeing in our district are a couple of categories. Let's go back. A couple of categories. One is the doing that. There we go. One is breaking even and up to 1.5 inches of rainfall deficit, and that's in that yellow color. That's mainly over in the north and west and down in the south part of our district. And then we did have, as we start to go north up in like Hamilton County, Suwannee County, over into Baker, and also Columbia counties, we're seeing that 1.5 to 3 inch rainfall deficit, and that's in that orange color. Looking a little bit better, we are, as opposed to down in the southern part of Florida, where they're still struggling with some rainfall issues. 4.5 to 6 inches of rainfall deficit, even upwards of 6 to 7.5 inch. You can kind of see that little spot right down there in Peninsula Florida. Like I said, we could definitely use some more rain, but it could be a little bit worse in our area. This is the stream flow conditions for June 2025. I wanted to mention that most of our gauges are showing that normal range to begin and end the month. That's South Georgia and North Florida. That's that 25th to 75th percentile range. A couple of exceptions, actually a few exceptions, over in the Santa Fe Basin, Graham, the gauge at Graham actually began and ended in the below normal, that 10th to 25th percentile. And also Fort White saw that below normal to end the month as well. Unfortunately, Worthington Springs began the month in below normal, that 10th to 25th percentile of flow, and ended in that much below normal, that red category. That's less than 10th percentile of flow. That basin doesn't seem to be getting quite the rain that the other basins do around our district. I guess one more gauge up at St. Mary's. That one's outside of our district, but that one was seeing below normal flows to end the month as well. All right, our upper Florida and aquifer levels, this was the end of May. I want to show this to compare with our June. So what we're seeing in May were some areas of 75th to 90th percentile of well levels. This is up in Madison and Jefferson counties. Saw some over in Lafayette and then Suwannee County as well. Suwannee County actually had one well that was above 90th percentile at that point. And we were starting to see some 10th to 25th percentile over in Dixie County, Levy County, and then up into Jefferson County as well. And I did want to point out most of our wells were trending down at that point from the month before. Fast forward to June, a little bit more of a degradation. We've got some large areas now of 10th to 25th percentile stretching from Levy County through Dixie County up into Lafayette, even over into Gilchrist and Columbia. They each had one well in that 10th to 25th percentile. Most of the districts still showing that 25th to 75th, that normal range, despite the fact that we are seeing some areas that are below 10th percentile. We've got one well in Dixie County, one well in Levy County, and this well over in Jefferson County. We're all showing that below 10th percentile for the month. Because of less than average amounts of rainfall, we're seeing some trending downward of most of our wells that we have in this report. This is U.S. Drought Monitor. This was released last Thursday, July 3rd. Really, what I wanted to point out is most of our district not really showing any issues at this point, except the southern and eastern parts of our district, stretching from southern Dixie County through Levy County, Alachua County, and to Bradford County, all showing abnormally dry. Now, I do expect if we don't start getting a little bit more rainfall, we could probably see some more of the abnormally dry stretching up into our district, just depending on how they do the U.S. Drought Monitor this coming Thursday. That's when that will be released. As far as climate goes, I did want to mention we're still in an El Nino Southern Oscillation neutral condition. That's at an 82% probability of occurring all the way through August at this point. Looks like we may carry that on into the winter with us too. It's a 48% chance from November to January of that continuing, or we actually have a 41% chance of dropping back into a La Nina. So it's kind of a toss-up what's going to happen this winter. We'll just kind of have to keep an eye on that as we go down the road. With that said, though, National Oceanic, excuse me, and Atmospheric Administration's seasonal outlook for July through September is showing us leaning above for rainfall. Most of the East Coast is seeing that as well. It's our kind of our wet season, and we are prone to any sort of tropical moisture coming in. So that's kind of what their models are pointing at right now for that. Also above normal temperature probabilities. Looks like we're leaning above on that one. It doesn't look too dark, that shade of orange, but most of the state of Florida, unless you go to the South Florida, that one's likely above, but we are leaning above for temperature when it comes to July through September. All right, I wanted to give an update for the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season. I showed this last month, but I wanted to go ahead and just kind of show this again. 60% chance of above normal season has been predicted by the National Hurricane Center. We've got 13 to 19 named storms. Of those storms, 6 to 10 hurricanes and 3 to 5 major hurricanes from that point on. We can go ahead and actually mark off 3 right now. Andrea, Barry, and Chantal. They have all formed as tropical storms and dissipated at this point. Andrea was up in the kind of North Atlantic, more or less a fish storm. The Barry actually formed in the Bay of Campeche and went into Mexico. I believe some of that rainfall may have contributed to the unfortunate events that we saw in Texas. And Chantal actually made landfall this past, I believe, Saturday or Sunday into South Carolina, and it's starting to flood areas up in North Carolina and Virginia as well. So those were some real big rainmakers that we had there. But up next, as far as Atlantic tropical cyclone names, is Dexter. That'll be next in line to be named. I did see this morning, I did want to point out, this is actually from yesterday afternoon. This morning does have us no tropical cyclone activity expected in the next 7 days. So that's definitely a good thing for us. All right, so I want to show this. I like to show this every year. This is the Atlantic hurricane frequencies. Basically, they ranked all the number of hurricanes through time. The hurricanes and tropical storms are in that red. That yellow is hurricanes by themselves. I did want to point out we're just on the front side of July 10th. So if it feels like it hasn't been very active, it typically isn't very active this time of year. It's kind of quiet, but we start to climb this peak around middle of August, and then we hit that climatological peak of hurricane season on September 10th, and then from that point on, we kind of go down. But it's not time to let our guard down. We definitely need to keep an eye on it. It only takes one storm for us to feel the effects, for sure. All right, finally, our June 2025 summary, we had a rainfall amount of 5.5 inches, and that's about 19% lower than that long-term average of 6.8 inches. We had a 12-month district-wide rainfall deficit at the end of May of 3.3 inches. We were able to whittle that down a little bit to about just under an inch of rainfall deficit at 0.96. District-wide upper Florida and aquifer levels fell from the 54th percentile in May to the 44th percentile in June, and that's due to median level decrease across our monitored wells of about 0.8 of a foot. As I mentioned, El Nino Southern Oscillation neutral conditions are present, and they're favored through the summer, an 82% chance from June to August. We're currently in that window of time right now. And may continue into winter. We've got 48% chance of the neutral conditions or 41% chance of falling back into the La Nina from November to January. So we'll just kind of have to keep an eye on that as we go down the calendar. Parts of Dixie, Levy, Alachua, and Bradford counties are showing abnormally dry conditions as of this past update for the U.S. Drought Monitor. And finally, we've had 3 named storms so far in the Atlantic hurricane season. Andrea, Barry, and Chantal. Next up is Dexter for the naming convention. With that, Madam Chair, I'll take any questions the board may have.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Robbie, when we were talking about the rainfall in the beginning, it looked like Levy County had the 9 to 10 inches heaviest rainfall in the district. And then we go to the aquifer, and it's the driest and trending down. So does it have a lot of coastal runoff there, or do we not get any
Madam Chair.
absorption?
So I went back and looked at that because I was wondering if we were going to get that question. What's happened in this area of Levy County is it has been dry for a long time. This is the first map I've seen of Levy County, a little bit, that actually has these big amounts of rainfall on it. So they've been dry for a little bit. Also, this area is unconfined geologically speaking, so that means that anything that goes in the ground comes out quick. So, and plus we're in that time of year, we've got irrigation going, we've got heat, we've got evapotranspiration, all that stuff's going on right now. So honestly, it was just kind of a little bit of the perfect storm for Levy County, but if they can continue on this path of getting more rainfall in that area, then that would be beneficial for the aquifer for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
I think we've gone through guests. Do we have any other cooperating agency information? Okay. Thank you, Hugh. All right, Tom, do we have any legal activities we need to get an update on?
No, ma'am, I had one thing on consent that's been approved by consent, and then I don't have anything else at this time unless y'all have questions of me.
Okay, any questions for Tom? All righty. We'll then go to our facilities update. Tim, you're going to have to get you a bigger mower out there with all that sod coming in.
It's coming in good, isn't it?
It is, looks great.
Does. They've done a lot of work. So, Madam Chair, members of the board, those in attendance, good morning. For business and community services, you'll find items number 10 through 22 on this morning's agenda. And we'll start this morning with item 12, a facilities update given by Mr. Ben Glass from the Office of Administration. He's also going to cover item number 14, which is one of our ag cost share items. Item number 13 is a legislative session update, and Tyler Winburn, our Legislative and Community Affairs Coordinator, will be giving that. Items number 14, 15, 16, 17, and 21 were approved by way of consent agenda, so thank you for those approvals. Then we have item number 18, which can be found on BCS page 18. This will be our millage, tentative millage and budget, and that's going to be given by Miss Kristen Thompson from the Office of Finance. And then we'll wrap up with the informational items 20 and 21, and we'll ask Leroy Marshall to cover those. So I'll ask Ben to step up at this time.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. By way of a facilities update, as you mentioned, the berms are gone. The berms are out. We have on two sides of the building sod, they're in the process of sodding the south side. So we'll get that in place to help control any erosion issues while they're continuing to do the siding. We expect hopefully in the next month siding to begin going up. So happy to answer any questions about facilities.
Any questions on their progress? Well, it looks great. I'll be glad to see the siding taken care of. We're getting close to having holes in the wall, so I'm glad that's happening. Thank you, sir.
One item for your consideration this morning on BCS page 1, staff recommends that the governing board authorize the executive director to enter into contract with Milkaway Dairy Incorporated to implement agriculture cost share practices for an amount not to exceed $795,000. So this, if you'll think back, this is the third of these types of projects that you all have seen in the last year. This is the beginning of the construction phase for the sustainability implementation plans that we worked with on several dairies in our region. This dairy is located in Lafayette County. They have two facilities. This particular project will be at the larger of the two facilities. They are going to look at, they're going to construct a 4-acre stormwater holding pond or wastewater holding pond, and also screen separators to take out the solid material from their wastewater and some other associated infrastructure with that. That allows them to better time their wastewater applications. It's going to give them additional holding capacity so they can time it by when the crop that they're applying the wastewater to needs the water versus when they've got to empty out their lagoon to create capacity. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ben? And this was part of that money that the dairies were awarded from Tallahassee.
Yes, ma'am. That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay. All right.
I do want to mention, Madam Chair, I neglected, we do have Mr. Johan Haycoop as well as Ray Hodge in the audience representing Milkaway Dairies.
Okay, thank you. Thank y'all for coming.
I make the recommendation that we approve it.
Second.
We have a motion, and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thanks, Ben.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Tyler Winburn. I'm the Legislative and Government Affairs Coordinator. I'm here to give you the long-anticipated 2025 legislative session review update. This year, the session started off with an organizational session, and it was followed quickly by committee weeks from December through February. Session began March 4th, and the scheduled end date was May 2nd. Session ended up concluding on June 16th, and the budget was signed into law on June 30th. Summary by the numbers. This session, there was 1,989 bills filed in the legislature. That's 32 more bills than was filed the year previously. There were 2,920 amendments made to those bills, and ultimately 269 bills passed both chambers, which represented 56 fewer bills than the year before. The budget that was given to the governor was $115.1 billion. Throughout the session, we track and monitor several bills, and today I want to highlight 5 of those bills and the high points of them. The first bill I want to talk about is Senate Bill 492, which is mitigation banks. This bill establishes an updated standardized schedule for releasing mitigation banks credits. It authorizes an applicant to propose an alternative credit release schedule. It mandates modification of existing permitted credit release schedules upon request under certain conditions. It allows a one-time use of out-of-service area mitigation credits if local credits are insufficient. And it establishes a multiplier factor for out-of-service area and out-of-kind credits, increasing the overall credit requirement based on geographical and ecological distances. And finally, it requires mitigation banks to provide annual accounting of available credits that have to be reported, and the Department of Environmental Protection or water management districts must compile a report and is provided to the legislature. The second bill I wanted to highlight is Senate Bill 108, which is titled Administrative Procedures. This bill modernizes and streamlines Florida's administrative rulemaking process by establishing stricter requirements, new deadlines, and enhanced oversight for agencies adopting, reviewing, and amending rules. This bill prohibits rules from expiring automatically unless explicitly authorized by law. It mandates at least 7-day period between the notice of rule development and the notice of proposed rule, and adds a more detailed content and procedural requirements for notices. This bill also requires agencies to disclose any offered cost regulatory alternatives. It authorizes agencies to adopt emergency rules, and it clarifies legislative ratification thresholds. The last thing that this bill does is it creates a new rule review process, which is going to be statute 120.5435, that requires agencies to systematically review and evaluate existing rules and report that progress of rule review to the legislator over the next 5 years. The third bill that I wanted to highlight is House Bill 209, which is titled State Land Management. This bill applies only to lands in state parks, so it won't apply to our land, and it's a targeted bill to strengthen environmental stewardship of Florida parks, requiring public hearings, increase public access, land management information, and restricting new development in state parks. This bill also requires an advisory group to provide input and hold public hearings on individual management plans for parcels over 160 acres that are within state parks. The fourth bill that I want to highlight is Senate Bill 180, titled Emergencies. This bill largely speaks to emergency management in counties, but also has some implications on us. This bill enhances and streamlines state emergency management, recovery, and rebuilding processes, and while restricting certain local government actions after natural disasters. It clarifies and updates references, reporting requirements, and training protocols that various agencies have to complete. It creates a natural hazards risk and mitigation interagency coordinating group. This group is created for the purpose of sharing information and current potential risk throughout the state. And we will have a spot on that agency group, and we'll be represented there along with other water management districts. It also creates, under declared emergencies, a tolling and extension for the formal delineation and determination of the extent of wetlands. The final bill that I want to talk about is Senate Bill 1228, which is spring restoration. This bill allows and creates an avenue for domestic wastewater facilities with an approved plan to eliminate non-beneficial surface water discharges to request to amend and incorporate a reclaimed water project identified in the outstanding Florida Springs Recovery and Prevention Strategy. Moving on to appropriations, the district received appropriations in the amount of $6.5 million this year, $2.2 million for operations, just shy of $500,000 for ERP, $1.7 million for land management, $1.6 million for minimum flows and levels, and $352,000 for payment in lieu of taxes. Within the district, there are also several state water projects. Archer received $1.2 million for water connection to Newberry's wastewater treatment facility. Baker County received a water system elevated storage tank at the price of $2 million. Cross City received a wastewater treatment plant and spray field expansion. Greenville received $850,000 for water line replacement. Hamilton County received a water treatment allocation of $500,000. Lafayette County received $1.3 million for Roosevelt Circle flooding area relief. Monticello received a water loss and conservation project. Perry received automated water and gas meters at $2.6 million. Stark bypass project received $2 million in Stark, and Suwannee County received $1 million for utility design planning for the regional shelter. Statewide, there are 5 appropriations of interest. Alternative water supply received $5 million or $50 million. Springs funding received $50 million. Flood and sea level rise program received $150 million. $18 million went to Florida Forever program, and $250 million went to the Rural and Family Lands program. Lastly, I want to congratulate Mr. Harry Smith on his reappointment confirmation, Larry Thompson for his reappointment confirmation, and board member George Wheeler for his appointment confirmation. So these 3 board members were up for confirmation. They made it through the process, so congratulations to each of you. And that's all I have, unless there are questions.
All right. Questions? That was a lot of information.
Yeah, I made it as brief as I could.
All right.
Thank
No
you.
other questions? Thank you, sir. Good morning, Kristen.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I have for you item number 18, which can be found on BCS page 18, in reference to fiscal year 2025 to 2026 tentative millage and budget. Pursuant to section 373.536 Florida statute, the district is required to submit for consideration by the board a tentative budget covering its proposed operation and requirements for the ensuing fiscal year by July the 15th. As you may recall, we did present a tentative budget workshop following the May board. And while there have been some variations and shifts by expenditure type and program area, based on updates of the state budget, the overall expenditure authority remains at $83,629,325, which is also consistent with the preliminary budget and reflects a approximate $3.6 million increase over the current fiscal year 24-25 budget of $79,967,278. The staff is requesting or recommending that the board authorize the executive director to set the tentative millage at the rollback rate. We did receive updated property values certified from the property appraisers yesterday. As of right now, the rollback rate is 0.2862 mils. And grant staff the authority to adjust the rollback rate if final data changes. Approve the fiscal year 2025 to 2026 tentative budget. Authorize staff to make recommended adjustments and corrections to the budget, and authorize staff to submit the standard format tentative budget pursuant to section 373.536 by August 1st, and authorize staff to notify the property appraisers of the district's 15 counties that the district proposes to levy a rollback millage rate.
Any questions for Kristen? Is there a motion?
Make that motion, Madam Chair.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Oh.
I just wanted to mention to you the deleted agenda item. Wanted to make mention that we will be bringing that before you at next board in August.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you for doing our rulemaking on consent. Just to give an update of a couple of things that have been going on that you guys are probably hearing about. The Waukesasa FRR that was done July 1st down in Bronson went pretty well. We had about 20 or so people in attendance. We had a request from Levy County to do a little bit of extra outreach, so we are in contact with the county manager there, and will assist them in getting a little bit of extra outreach for the Waukesasa, for the citizens out there to respond. The deadline to respond to that is October 1st. So typically it's a 30-day deadline, but we gave them 90 so that we can get all of our comments in. So we are working through that process. The next thing that we have here at the district is we're working with the Florida Floodplain Managers Association to host an L273 is the Certified Floodplain Managers class. That will be July 21st through the 24th. It will be here in this room. If anybody is hearing about this for the first time, it is already too late. That class is full with 5 or 6 on the waiting list. So I do believe we have 5 or 6 staff that will be taking that class. And so that'll be a full class, and we are excited about hosting that. The CFM class is, as you know, as cutbacks happen, FEMA will be cutting back on the number of CFM classes. And so we were really lucky to be able to get to host this class and get, a number of our staff, hopefully will pass the test to be CFMs. Next thing we have on the agenda for us is July 31st. We have a resilience meeting for the Alapaha and the Osceola. That resilience meeting, again, will be July 31st, and we will be meeting with the counties to talk about. So basically, if you remember in the process, the resilience is at the end. It's right before the maps go effective. After we've done this resilience meeting, we have a final letter of determination, and then within 6 or 7 months, the maps will be effective. So we're looking for our maps in the Alapaha and the Osceola to be effective within the next couple of months. But the resilience is the last meeting, and we're doing that. In addition to that, as we talk about rolling, and every 8 years we do a rolling cycle, we're also doing a kickoff for the next set of meetings, of maps in the Osceola and Alapaha, and that will also be on the 31st. So in the morning, we're doing the resilience. In the afternoon, we're doing the kickoff for the next set, and that will be all again on the 31st. You guys have any questions for me?
Questions for Leroy? Nope. All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Thanks, Tim. So let's see here. Permitting summary report. And then we've got, hi. Love your dress today. That's awfully pretty.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. We have several items for y'all to consider today. But before we get started on those items, I have a few announcements. The first of which is to introduce 2 new employees we have in our Office of Hydrologic Data Collection. And these staff work for Vince Robinson, our Hydrologic Data Collection Program Manager. And the first, so we'll just go alphabetically. So we'll start with Christian Holton. Christian, if you'll stand. You can come stand by me if you want to. So Christian and his new teammate Morgan both joined the district last month. We're thrilled to have them. Christian hails from Hamilton County, so he is a local. He brings a background in well drilling. He also has done some different home health, working with Haven medical equipment delivery to hospice patients, but really wanted to get back into the outdoors and working in a hydrologic setting, working with a resource. And so he enjoys fishing and other outdoor activities, whether it's hiking through the district's trails or other public lands, camping, exploring new places. Most importantly, Christian would tell you that he is a husband and a father to a 3-year-old little girl, and is happy to be working here with the district and the team.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
So we're thrilled to have Christian.
Welcome,
Welcome.
welcome,
Thank you
Christian.
very much, very much. All right. The next new employee that we have is Morgan Pearson. So Morgan joins us also in the same office as a Hydrologic Data Collection Specialist 1. Morgan is also a local to the district. He's from Lafayette County, and most recently, prior to working at UF-IFAS, where he came from to us, he graduated from Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College. So we've got, I think, 4 AVAC grads here at the district now, which I'm also an alum, proud to have another AVAC alum here, and where he received a degree in ag education. And then, like I mentioned, went on to work at the UF-IFAS Center here in Live Oak, and then came to us. So we're really thrilled to have him on our hydrologic data collection team. One of the other, in addition to hydrologic data gathering, this team gathers our agricultural monitoring data. So his awareness and knowledge of our local communities and its agricultural practices are very, very important and useful to that program. So we're thrilled to have both of these new teammates. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Morgan. Welcome.
All right. With that, I will move on to our next announcement. So in addition to the new employees, I wanted to provide the board with an update on the Ellaville Exchange property that y'all heard about several months ago. And last week, we received a verbal request from the applicant to withdraw their application from the district's consideration. The applicant has ceased negotiations for the Riverview property and therefore have withdrawn their application for the Ellaville property. We requested a written withdrawal also, which we received this morning. So staff will update the August land acquisition and surplus materials to reflect that project closure. And in August, we will bring a memorandum to the board requesting that the board authorize staff to explore an intergovernmental exchange with a sister conservation agency for property that is more in line with the district's mission. This action will allow for a potential intergovernmental conveyance, but remove the property from the surplus list. And with that, I will take any questions on that item, which will come back to you in August.
Any questions, comments? All right, thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Back to our agenda. The Division of Outreach and Operations has 7 items for your consideration today. Item number 23, 24, and 28 are for informational purposes. Items number 25 and 26 and 27, I will be presenting. Item number 29, the B/apiary leases, noted, Mr. Schwab. You approved on consent, which we appreciate very much. And we also have a workshop this afternoon, well, hope maybe this morning, that will be presented by our land management chief, Lorna Radcliffe, on the district's land management plan, which we'll then hopefully bring back to you in August for your consideration and vote. All right, to get us started, we will begin with item number 25. That is the resolution to sell a lot in Turkey Island to Brian Keith Barton and Deborah Ann Barton. So back in December, the district received a request to surplus this piece of property at the parcel reference. It is 0.34 acres, as you can see indicated in the map. It is the parcel that is in white. And this parcel is not actively managed by district staff because of largely its size, its lack of adjacency to the other larger Turkey Island tract. So the board agreed to surplus it. We then later received an offer from Brian and Deborah Barton at $7,500 for the parcel. A market analysis of recent sales in the area found the offer to be reasonable. However, pursuant to statute, all sales shall be for no less than the appraised value. The purchase agreement stipulates that the sale price be at the offer price or at the appraisal price, whichever is higher, and the buyers are responsible for all other closing costs. The buyers have provided a signed purchase agreement and submitted the 10% bid guarantee, and the buyers have requested to install an open pole barn and agreed to restrict all other permanent development. The property was noticed on the dates listed in your packet, June 6th, June 13th, and June 20th. No other offers were received as of today. And upon board approval of the sale, the district will execute the purchase agreement, allowing the buyers to complete any remaining deliverables and move to closing. And with that, we have maps provided in your packet, and we have the map here. With that, I'll take any questions on this item.
Questions? No? Worked on that one for a while. Do we need a motion on that one?
I need a motion and your action. Yes, ma'am.
Make the motion, Madam Chair.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. Next item we have for you is on OPS page 20. And staff are presenting this item to you today with one modification. The board item here listed, you see the bullets here. So this is largely an administrative or what we would call clerical request. There's one item, and I'll make the modification requests right now. So we are requesting to move items, what's listed there, section 11, A, B, and D. However, staff, after looking at this further, would like to retain section 11D in the directive. It's specific to surplus guidelines that are considered. You've got a section in your red line version where you've got you've got parent guidelines listed, and then this section 11D fleshes those guidelines out further, and we feel that it's prudent to have that in the directive. So we would like the board to approve the changes to this resolution with the modification to keep section 11D in the directive.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
One final item for your consideration today, and this is an amendment to our Cedar Hammock conservation easement. This is now also known locally as the Camp Azalea area. We have representatives from Manulife here today, so if you have any questions that you would like to direct to them, they are also here with us. Back in 2002, the district acquired a conservation easement over the Cedar Hammock area, which you can see here on the map here. It's a large area. And the party subsequently amended that conservation easement in August 2002 and May 2015. So this would be the third amendment. Manulife is the current owner of this easement and has approached the district to clarify several terms within the easement and also request additional activities on the site, which the district feels are in line with conservation practices. Those activities are to allow for gopher tortoise mitigation sites. It's also to allow for the creation of wetland or carbon mitigation banks and the generation of biodiversity credits, which the district feels adds to the conservation value of the amendment. Separately, Manulife has requested that pine straw raking be expressly allowed in the easement. That activity has been occurring for some time, which the district allows under its silvicultural activity verbiage. So we feel like it's in line with what's already allowed. They would just like it expressly written, which the district has no objections to. Governing Board Directive 20-2-0005 requires a mutually beneficial amendment to result in equal or net increase in conservation value, which we think that these mitigation activities do. Enrolling the property in the perpetual gopher tortoise mitigation site will greatly increase the conservation value compared to the current industrial forest management activities. The allowance of apiary leases and clarification of the additional terms should have no impact on the conservation value. Staff believe the amendment will increase Staff believe the amendment will result in a net increase in conservation value and that this request has met all requirements of the governing board directive that outlines conservation easement amendments. Manulife has reimbursed the district for all costs incurred in processing this amendment, which includes any recording fees and staff time for all staff involved, which they have already prepaid. And pursuant to the directive, the executive director may bypass the lands committee and bring this straight to the board, which we did and discussed with Mr. Schwab, the lands committee chair, prior to this. With that, I will take any questions.
Any questions at this time from the board? I have your representatives, would they like to speak?
Most notably, it'd be good to thank staff for their cooperation and their willingness to work with us as we've proposed this conservation easement amendment. Generally speaking, our overarching goals are to increase the conservation value of the parcel. We do that through the implementation of the Cedar Hammock project, as well as to enhance the working values of a forest. So one of our company tenets that I think is important to be aware of is good stewardship is good business, and we want to continue to provide those services through the easement and through our practices on the land.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Chad Richard, thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Any questions for Chad? Well, it sounds great. And we appreciate you being interested in maintaining and enhancing the conservation on the property. Thank you very much. All right. So we need a motion
Make that motion, Madam Chair.
and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
Thank you,
Yes,
Madam
ma'am.
Chair, and I'll just mention for fun, I pulled the numbers of the original acquisition in 2002. Anybody want to take a guess what the district paid for its conservation easement on 17,000 acres back in 2002?
Yes, absolutely.
$498 per acre.
Wow.
Certainly not what we pay today. for an easement. So.
How many acres was that again?
17,000.
17,000.
I got the exact number, Madam Chair. Hold on. 17,000. Hold on. 17,085. We paid a total of $8,508,352.25. So.
That was a good deal.
It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of
Like
money.
A lot of money, Madam Chair, but compared to today's prices, it seems like a very good deal. Yes, ma'am. That concludes our items for outreach and operations.
All right, thank you. All right, Dr. Brown.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Water Resource Division has 5 items for you. Just a brief update, and then I'll give a presentation on the Lower Santa Fe and Itchtucknee Water Project. Then we'll have Miss Susie Hetrick come up for item number 32, which is a USGS monitoring agreement update. Thank you for your approval by way of the consent agenda for items 33 and 34. 33 continues our agreement with the St. John's District. They do our lab analysis. It helps both districts maintain a lab to get high-quality data for us. And then 34 was the final approval of the swim plan that we discussed last month. We made some minor edits based on feedback from the Florida DEP, and that document is now finalized. I think other than that, in terms of general updates, just we were going to be continuing to bring forward next month and then the month after some other ongoing contracts for next fiscal year as we wrap up this year and look towards next year. Unless there's any general questions, I'll give you an update on the Lower Santa Fe project work.
Any questions so far? All righty.
Okay. So we have been working actively trying to develop projects for the Lower Santa Fe and Itchtucknee, and this is just bringing you up to date on where we are at this point in the process. Before we go to that, I am just going to briefly recap the MFL and where we are in the MFL process, because I know that this has been a slow-moving process. So if you think of the process for MFL development, you go through a data collection phase, you gather your environmental data, you analyze, develop models, put together a report. That report goes out for an external technical peer review. You receive public comment and peer review comments. You address those comments. You amend the technical report. Then once you have that amended, you use your water use information from your planning process, as well as our regional model to assess where we are relative to what the system needs to maintain its healthy state. At that point, with that status assessment, if it's determined that you need a recovery or prevention strategy, if you need to put more water into the system, then you have to do two things in parallel. There has to be a rule development process, but then alongside that, there has to be a recovery prevention strategy, a strategy on how to implement the recovery for the area. And that is where we are on the Lower Santa Fe, is trying to put together those two parallel processes, the rule development and then the implementation strategy. The MFL itself is, again, looking at the water resource values, the hydrologic condition that needs to be protected. Once you've assessed those hydrologic water resource values, then you look at your current use and your future use to determine whether there is sufficient water today and then also sufficient water in the future. For the Lower Santa Fe and Itchtucknee rivers and Priority Springs, the limiting water resource values on the river itself at the Fort White gauge was looking at general fish passage, the ability of the fish to get through some of those shoals, kind of like what we've talked about on the Swanee, and then also specifically largemouth bass habitat at the US 441 gauge. For the Itchtucknee River, it was really looking at the woody habitat and the hydric soils and making sure those are protected for a more stable system. And so drawing down the water there can impact those adjacent soils and habitat. This is information that you saw presented during the water supply planning process. This is looking at the North Florida planning region as a whole. So the eastern part of the eastern part of our district, as well as region 1 of the St. John's district. In terms of the bar chart there, the bar chart is showing the water use. Our use as of 2015, which is the year, the base year of that planning process, was right around 500 million gallons per day. The projected use, again, in the absence of additional conservation or other efforts to reduce water use on a per person basis, that projection shows that we have an increasing demand in water. The conclusion of this is that we need to continue to invest in both conservation to become more efficient in our water use, but also projects that will allow us to recharge the aquifer. This again is the status based on the limiting water resource values and the current and projected growth for this area. The current flows are not being met at the US Highway 441 gauge and the Itchtucknee at Highway 27. And again, if no efforts were made to conserve additional water or provide additional recharge, then we would be further or deeper into recovery by 2045. And again, just as a refresher, we are currently, that MFL is currently in a recovery strategy. At that point, the 441 gauge was not assessed separately, but the Santa Fe Fort White was evaluated to be in recovery, as well as the Highway 27 gauge. So moving on to just the implementation strategy and the requirements associated with that strategy. The requirements for the implementation strategy is that it be adopted, as I mentioned, concurrently with the MFL. So the rule and the strategy on implementation have to come together. It needs to be expeditiously implemented, and it needs to include a phasing or a phasing strategy that basically defines how the system will be recovered within the required time frame. This is just a little bit more information because the Ichetucknee and some of the springs on the Santa Fe are outstanding Florida springs pursuant to Florida statute. We have more requirements as it relates to the projects themselves, including a priority listing for the project, the estimated cost of the project, implementation that defines that it has to be done within 20 years, and then also milestones to be hit at 5 and in 15 years to ensure that we're going to be achieving the MFL within the 20-year time frame. From a regulatory standpoint, the requirement is that when people come in for water use permits, they have to be permitted in accordance with the implementation strategy. So just as when we looked at that permit a few months ago, again, it had to be done in accordance with the implementation strategy or the recovery strategy that's in place. And so that would also be true for any updates that we make to that recovery strategy. So Warren came up to talk to you about some of the regional project development that the Suwannee District has been focused on here to try and, again, try to capture and store water in the Suwannee and Santa Fe basins, to recharge, identify places that are suitable for rapid infiltration basins, and then focus on how we can optimize benefits. But in conversations with our partners, it becomes clear that it would be ideal if we could identify a larger regional project that would meet the needs of users both in the Suwannee and St. Johns District. So we have been engaging with St. Johns and some of the larger water users in the St. Johns District to try to identify what those solutions could be. It was a project that Hugh Thomas came up to talk to you a little bit about towards the end of last year, talking about what kind of regional concepts might be available. And again, at that point, as a part of that process, basically the effort was to put everything on the table. What are all the available sources of water that could be used to help meet future demands in this area? And then there was kind of a evaluation of the pros and cons of those different sources, and also some of the source water reliability conversations were had. Oops, he clicks, okay. So the solution that rose to the top at this point is what's being called the Water First North Florida effort. The goal of this would be to utilize the 40 million gallons per day of water that Jacksonville Electric is currently discharging towards the coast, that we would bring that in, we would treat it in a wetland, ideally somewhere in the St. Johns District, and then that water, once it's gone through the wetland process, could be brought further west for recharge in our district. This would be a long-term project, but it would allow us to optimize the location for recharge to really meet the needs of the entire region and to provide a long-term solution that would allow for water users in both districts to meet their reasonable beneficial needs while sustaining the natural systems. The time frame that we're looking at here, again, this is a large project. It's a multi-year effort. The first 3 years basically are looking, and that's what's going on right now, is basically looking at the governance, because you're going to be crossing county boundaries, you're going to be crossing utility boundaries, you're going to be crossing water management district boundaries as you look at some of these projects. So there would be questions about the governance and funding plans. There would also be the development of communications plan. St. John's has also put together a request for qualifications right now. There's an open RFQ that we are participating in as reviewers that would help us with optimizing the siting of where recharge sites and what types of treatment and what types of recharge sites could be selected. And then separately, JEA is working on wetland treatment analyses for their own water, and then also looking at some potential sites that they already own that could be candidates for use as a treatment wetland. Years 3 and 4 would be looking at preliminary design reports, and then you'd be working your way through the 30%, 60%, and 100% design and permitting at years 4 through 7. Construction would start, and then the hope would be that by year 13, that project could start up. So as I mentioned, there's already some work that's underway. There's a pilot study that is currently being done by JEA to evaluate what pretreatment might be necessary before you bring their water to a treatment wetland, in case they have to bring anything out of the system before the wetland itself provides treatment. There's also that open RFQ that I mentioned that would be looking at how do you optimize the siting of potential recharge sites. And then also, there is some wetland site assessment, again, as I mentioned, on parcels that might already be owned by JEA that could be candidates for wetlands in the St. Johns district for those treatment wetlands. They're looking at those candidate sites and assessing their feasibility. I think those are the highlights that I wanted to just bring to your attention. There is also, we're anticipating rulemaking happening this summer, and I have contact information if anybody needs it, and we'll certainly bring back to the board once we know of any rulemaking that's being scheduled. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions. That was too many clicks.
If you go back to the chart showing the increase in population, what does it look like in 13 years?
So 13 years. This is 2025.
35.
So let's say between 2035 and 2040. So looking at just over 2.7 million people within the partnership area, many of those in the St. Johns district. And then water use, again, without the implementation of conservation, you would be looking at potentially water use over 630 million gallons per day. And I do want to emphasize this in no way is intended to diminish the importance of all the conservation efforts that we already have going underway. The goal would be to do both recharge, but then also to make sure that all of our water use is being as efficient, reasonable, beneficial as possible. So we can't let up on the conservation even as we're seeking these large recharge projects.
Dr. Brown, we're looking at a regional project here. Do you have an idea of the size of the treatment wetlands that we're talking about?
That's some of what's going to be worked on as a part of this RFQ process. They would be looking at how much acreage you would need to do that sort of treatment. So very much going to depend on landscape and also the needs of what needs to be treated, and then also the characteristics of the landscape itself.
One question. One would be the effluent that coming out of the treatment wetlands could go to a direct recharge?
Again, it would depend on that. You would likely, because it would be a surface water wetland. What we see is that the water quality coming out of those surface water wetlands is high, but you would also have to remove things like bacteria that might be present by nature of it being a surface water body.
And then also they'll be looking at other contributors than just JEA as far as bringing effluent into the wetland?
If there is, again, once the routing is done for where and how the routing is going to go, then the hope would be that you could collect and gather additional flows into that collection system, yes.
Regionalization seems to be the way to go. I mean, we're doing little samplings around about. The project like this is exciting.
Again, I think we need to continue to capture where we have flows, especially if you can put together something that helps with flood protection and recharge. I think that's very helpful. But at the time that the flows are low in our system, where we really need the help with flows, having a sustained water supply would be very valuable.
Like the way the future will be.
What would be the proposed price tag on a project like this?
The price tag that we're looking at for this would be just over $1 billion.
$1 billion?
Yes, sir.
Where's that money gonna come from?
Assistance of our partners, including the state.
I mean, I think the governor just approved a $21 billion budget? Is that-
115 billion.
How much?
115
115?
billion.
Oh, man, so $1 billion, that's just a
Yeah, we're
Drop
not
in the
even,
bucket.
drop in the bucket.
we're not even asked for 1%.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would phrase it as a drop in the bucket, but it is an investment in something that will allow us to manage and use water into the future. And so it would be a multi-year investment.
Dr. Brown, do you see a $1 billion investment like we're talking about? Do you see it possibly turning the trend around? What we've been experiencing in the Santa Fe Basin and Itchitucky Springs and all those stuff. I mean, I'd love to see the serious amount of flow.
If we're not losing sight of making sure we're being efficient with the water that we're using and all those other things.
I got that.
then
Yeah,
yes.
I'm talking about in addition to what we're doing today.
Correct.
Right? In addition to the trend lines, thinking another $1 billion in changing flows and natural things to get what we want. Do you see it making a difference?
Yes.
Because you're looking at, I mean, just think about this right here for a second. You're not just talking about spending $1 billion of the taxpayers' money, but you're also talking about changing landscapes and land uses and for what's being historically done on that land today. Where you're wanting to locate it somewhere in Baker County, there's a lot of national forest there. So do you go to the feds and ask for land? I mean, what do you do? What do you do with all that right there? What I'm saying is there's a lot of hoops to jump through, not just the price tag on it, but the actual changing of the landscape of what we're trying to do. And I'm sure it could be all work where it's all beneficial, but you're talking about a heavy lift here.
Yes, sir. Yeah, this is a heavy lift. And again, some of the sites that are under consideration have already been acquired and are owned, in which case, it would change that use, but not necessarily the intended use of that land. But yeah, this is going to be a multi-year process with a lot of cooperators at the table. There's going to be a lot of considerations. But again, if we look at what we need to do in terms of covering the systems while making water available for all the projected reasonable beneficial uses in the region, it does seem that a big regional recharge project has to be a part of that, again, if we're meeting that future demand.
I mean, is there any way to figure into the whole scheme of things? And I'm talking about thinking outside the box, but is there any way to be able to capture some of that water and possibly use it for power or electricity production and then, reuse it and continue to do some of that right there because of the increased demands? You at 2045, you're talking about another 20 years. What does technology do? How much more power do we need for the state? How do we incorporate some of that into these rural areas that you're talking about capturing? Can we make that work? I mean, is there possible partnerships where actually the $1 billion is generated by what we're making off what we're producing off the land, not just the timber or the aspect of it, but is there a way to think along those lines too?
Right. Well, and I think that's where having some of these large utilities in the partnership with us means that they're bringing that engineering expertise to the table, where you have utilities that have already large budgets and a lot of engineering expertise that would be looking at this and trying to identify a regional solution with us that will meet all the needs. But yes, having that type of expertise at the table is going to be critical.
100%. I think we're going to have to think differently about how we solve these problems, and it can't just be a conservation or a creation of a wetland to get the water back into the ground, but also how can we use that water because that need for that water is there. Not just conserving it, right? Not just doing it in not just having low flow toilets and everything else, working all that right there, but how do we incorporate that right there for the needs of the whole community, right? Because you got a community project here. And for the community in our mission, what we've been charged with, but there's also other needs for that water, right? And there's other needs for electricity generation and a whole bunch of other stuff that we're rapidly going toward. So how can I think it's really important, not just to think about the conservation side of things and what we're trying to do for water recharge, but how, as a state, if we're gonna invest $1 billion, not $1 million, but $1 billion into this right here, how can we solve other issues with that same investment, if you would? I think differently. I'm all for it. I think you're going in the right direction, but we gotta make sure we're different. We're thinking different, especially if you're asking me to approve or be on board with spending $1 billion for something like this right here. That's a serious investment. To me, it is.
It is to me as well.
We just put another zero on it.
So the need for the water is growing faster in Northeast Florida than it is here. And they already have a source of water on their shores. And I'll keep saying desalination
No, you won't.
because you can desalinate now between 1,000 gallons, you can desalinate between $5 and $10 to do 1,000 gallons, which brings it to a half a penny to a penny a gallon. So I look at gallons in which we can't tell with this project how many gallons it's going to give back to our aquifer right away, or I'm sure these engineers can figure this out. But we already have the ability with the water that's already doing, seawater intrusion or whatever you want to call it, or how, or sea level rise is already a problem over there. And so they have all the people that are affecting us, they're pulling the water from our aquifer. So let them fix part of their problem by desalinating a lot of water over there to flush toilets and wash cars. I still think desalination is a big deal in coastal communities. I'll leave it at that.
Can you go back to the slide where it's showing all the little arrows coming over where we're going to be putting the water possibly?
And please keep in mind, this is just a concept drawing. It is
Correct. So I guess my just looking at it, is the idea to stick it over on our side of the Cody Scarp to where we're recharging all the springs that are in our district, and then because when they're sucking it out in St. John's, they're pulling that over. So I'm just how's that dynamic working?
Yes, ma'am. So the goal would be to optimize the recharge where it's going to do the best benefit, but you don't want to put that water right next to a spring. You want to put it in the aquifer where it's gonna help the regional aquifer itself. And so the goal would be to optimize those locations based on the needs. And remember that we're still in the process of working on the Swanee MFLs. And so some thought would be that if we do this, then this would be a durable regional solution. And so we would be seeking to optimize the recharge location in a way that does the best benefit for the regional aquifer.
Big project.
Big project. There's a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of, there's a lot of people at the table, but they also are people that have a lot of experience at moving and treating water and recharging water. And so we'll continue to stay engaged and bring you information as we hit these phases.
That'd be great. Love to have updates. Any other questions, guys? Okay, sounds like a big one.
If there's nothing else on that, then our next item, we'll have Ms. Susie Hetrick come up to give you an update on the USGS monitoring agreement.
Susie, good morning.
Board. For agenda item 32, I have an update for the board about changes to our current joint funding agreement with the United States Geological Survey and anticipated changes for the fiscal year 26 JFA. When I say JFA, I mean joint funding agreement. Next month, we will be bringing to the board the 26 JFA for your approval, and this will give you a look at some of the changes we are expecting. Brought several slides to kind of walk you through what those changes are. It gets complicated quick. The current joint funding agreement with the USGS supports water resource monitoring at 39 surface water stations or sites throughout the district. This map shows the location of those sites distinguished by the data that are collected at each one. So as you can see from this map, most of the sites in our agreement have stage and discharge and temperature conductivity monitoring. So those are the ones that are indicated by the light aqua bullseyes throughout the district. And then we also have several sites indicated by the yellow dots by themselves that are just stage and discharge data collection. And we have about an equal number of sites that have stage and discharge as well as continuous water quality monitoring. Those are our priority springs that the USGS helps us monitor. And finally, we have a couple of oddball sites under the current JFA. One is a temperature conductivity only site up at the Alapaha Rise. And then one is a manual discharge measurements only at Little Fanning Spring, which is, it looks on this map that it's on top of Fanning Spring, but that's because they're so close together. So those are all of the 39 surface water sites that are on our current JFA. And for the benefit of folks who are new to this concept, each year the district enters into a funding agreement with the U.S. Geological Survey to help us monitor the district's water resources. And this is just a subset of all of the water resources that we monitor. We also monitor several on our own in-house and with contractors, private contractors. All right. In April of this year, the USGS requested an amendment to our current JFA for the one we're currently in this year to stop continuous nitrate monitoring at the 8 springs they currently monitor for us. And that was to begin on July the 1st, which was last week. And it actually, officially, that amendment is executed. And so folks might notice that there are still nitrate data coming in for those sites. That's because the sondes are still deployed. When the USGS goes out to service those stations, they will demobilize the nitrate sondes and bring them back in. So also to just kind of give some background, so for all of the spring sites that the USGS monitors for us, we have 2 different sondes deployed at each site. One is a dedicated nitrate only sonde, and then the other is a multi-parameter sonde that collects several different analytes of pH, dissolved oxygen, conductivity, and temperature. So while the nitrate data collection was discontinued July 1st, the pH, dissolved oxygen, conductivity, and temperature are continuing to be collected, and they will be through September 30th of this year. And I also want to point out that the district does and will continue to collect quarterly water quality grab sample data at each of these springs, which are analyzed to include nitrate concentrations. Beginning July 1st, nitrate will no longer be collected, is no longer being collected, and pH, dissolved oxygen, conductivity, and temperature will continue to be collected. So changes to our 2026 JFA that we anticipate will affect 15 of the sites that are on our current JFA. And I'm going to walk you through what each one of those sites currently have monitored, what the changes that are proposed, and what we anticipate doing about those. We'll start up in the northwest corner of the district with Wassissa. That's the Wassissa River near Wassissa gauge. The USGS will discontinue operation of the continuous stage and discharge and continuous water quality at that station on the Wassissa River beginning October 1st. The district's hydrologic data services office will pick up stage and manual discharge measurements at that site. In addition, the district will continue to collect quarter water quality samples from the site. However, continuous water quality monitoring will not, we will not pick that up for the time being. All right, going down coast on the Finn Holloway River near Hampton Springs. This is the tidal gauging station near Hampton Springs. Currently, the USGS collects stage and discharge and temperature and conductivity The USGS will discontinue starting October 1st, and we do not anticipate taking over this site. I will say that the USGS does currently also monitor stage and/or stage and discharge at 2 upstream locations on the Finn Holloway. That's the Finn Holloway near Foley on US 27 and the Finn Holloway at Foley at US 19. Those will continue. Those are not part of our joint funding agreement. Other folks fund that. On the Steinhatchee River, we have a gauging station, the Steinhatchee River near Cross City. That currently is a stage discharge only site that will be discontinued. USGS will discontinue monitoring that October 1st, and the district will pick this site up both with in-house and contractor support. Back up to the Alapaha Rise site where temperature and conductivity are only being collected by USGS. Those will be discontinued October 1st, but the district staff will pick that up also. Down to Falmouth Spring at Falmouth. The USGS is going to discontinue their stage and discharge monitoring there and their continuous water quality monitoring. The district anticipates HDS staff picking up the stage monitoring there. We will anticipate contracting out the discharge monitoring, and water resources staff will pick up the continuous water quality monitoring there. So that will continue in full. And in addition, we will also continue to collect quarterly grab sample data from there. Swanee River at Dowling Park. This is probably the most different one. It is a current stage, discharge, and temperature conductivity site. For the USGS to monitor that, they have obviously a stage gauge set up, but they also have temperature and conductivity sensors that are cabled. And since that bridge was replaced, I don't know if any of you have been across it in recent time, but it was replaced in a couple years back. And the level gauging is not so difficult for them to continue, but the conductivity and temperature is. And if you ever go across the bridge and you look out into the river, you can see where the original conductivity, kind of the data collection platform, is still in the midstream there that supports that conductivity and temperature. And they wish to discontinue that. It's not feasible for them to continue monitoring for us. It is also not feasible for us to pick up. So we are going to let that go, but they will continue to monitor stage and discharge at that site. And then for Little Fanning Springs, down near Fanning Springs, it is a manual discharge measurement only site, and we intend to pick that up and with the assistance of district contractors. Blue Hole Spring near Hildreth, that's within Ichetuckney Springs State Park. It's the one, if you go into the main day use area of the park, and there's a really long boardwalk that goes off into the woods, it takes you to Blue Hole. That is currently a stage and discharge site, and the district staff will pick up the stage monitoring, and we will hope to contract out the discharge monitoring for that. So that will continue. And finally, the Santa Fe River near Graham site is also a stage and discharge only site, and that is one that the district staff and its contractors will also pick up. So turning our attention to our water quality continuous monitoring sites. With the changes that are proposed for FY26, the USGS will continue monitoring water quality at 6 of our priority spring stations. So you'll have noted we already talked about Wassissa and Falmouth will come off of their list, but we will continue some or all parts of those. And they will continue to monitor water quality minus nitrate at the remaining 6 priority spring sites. That includes, well, up until October 1, that includes pH, dissolved oxygen, conductivity, and temperature. And beginning October 1, pH is also going to be discontinued there. So they will just be collecting dissolved oxygen, conductivity, and temperature at these 6 sites in FY26. This table summarizes what I just went through. So for each of the sites, what data are collected is indicated in the chart to the right of the name of the site. And then the ones we anticipate picking up either with district or contractor staff are highlighted in green. and the ones we do not anticipate picking up are highlighted in red. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll be happy to take any questions. We do anticipate bringing JFA to the board next month, and there will be a table that shows all of the stations that are being monitored and what our costs are.
Okay. Any questions? I have one. Do we have it in our budget to pick up what the USGS is dropping? I mean, as outlined by the chart.
The short answer is yes. A lot of that we will be absorbing with district staff time. We are still determining what the cost is going to be for the contractual portions of those, where we're going to be trying to contract out discharge measurements. Looks like yes, but we will know more before next month.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No? All right, thank you very much.
Well, good morning, board members. And Madam Chair, along those same lines to your question to Susie there, the Department of Environmental Protection realizing, the additional costs, they have, as it can be determined, they have offered to assist with funding, to increase funding, depending on what we find out.
Okay.
Relative to those increased costs with it, with that. Let me begin by saying thank you all. I appreciate your support for my role in this position and for, as it was on the consent agenda, for renewing my contract for another year. I appreciate the opportunity to continue serving here at the district and the support that you all have given me over the years with that. Amy mentioned, switching topics, Amy mentioned about a public workshop relative to the Lower Santa Fe and Ichetucknee rulemaking. It is tentatively scheduled for the 25th, but we are working on the draft language for that rule with our partners. And so that's the tentative date. We will keep you posted as we get closer to the actual date of that workshop itself. And it is anticipated at this time that it will be held here at the district. One of the things that we are doing towards that end is we're actually going to revise the sound system in here to where this particular microphone here at the podium, it does not provide any type of amplification for public comments. So we're going to be revising that. This is solely used for recording the comments and from an audio standpoint. But we are going to be putting in a speaker system here. Tyler has and Bo have worked with a local contractor that had performed work for us in the past. And so that work is anticipated to occur over the next couple of weeks where that'll be done with it. Thirdly, I would like to encourage all of you to attend. We are planning a tour for the board on the 19th of August. And this will be the tour over to the Clay County Utility Authority, also known as CCUA. And this is over in Middleburg. But Mr. Charles has offered that relative to that tour that day, if you care to ride over there together, we can meet at his shop in Lake City and we can get you the details on that. And we can leave vehicles there, consolidate into a large passenger van, and we can go over to that site for a tour that morning. And they've offered to graciously host us there. Their board will be meeting later that day at 2:00. So our tour will be scheduled for in the morning. I think we're supposed to meet over there about 9:00. But we'll give the other details to you on that. And we'll actually be looking at some of their treatment technology. CCUA has won several national awards relative to their reclaimed water and their ability to treat that water, not only to a potable use, but also from a reclaimed use. Similar technology would be used, although it will be modified some, would be used in the Water First North Florida project that Amy was mentioning, relative to what we would be looking at for recharge in our area. That is a very large project, certainly the largest project that this district has ever undertaken, and as well as St. John's, one of their larger projects also. And it is a multitude of partners that we will have on that project, not only from a participation standpoint, but also from a funding aspect of it. We'll be using public and private dollars to fund that project going forward is the plan at this time. And we have willing partners. Clay County Utility Authority is one of those partners that have been working with us over the last several years. And you've heard mention of the Jacksonville Electric Authority, JEA. They are also another willing partner to put effort and funding into this large project with that. But we'll keep you apprised of that as we go forward. Last thing I have, Madam Chair, is that we do have a workshop today. Caitlin mentioned this earlier. This is on our district land management plan, and Lorna will be presenting the information for that. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions or comments from the board.
Any questions for Hugh? Hugh, and we may have to ask Leroy on this. When we did all of our workshops for changing the flood zone areas, is there a website where have the changes been made to the maps already after we looked at all of the comments from the counties and the private comments on where pipes may have been missing or whatever? Have those maps been revised after reading the comments?
Just for clarification, you're speaking about the effort in the Santa Fe Basin, Alachua, and
right?
Columbia County in that area. And so I would defer to Leroy to address that.
Okay, that's been asked by a couple of people, so I wanted to.
We have some results from that. We are, we received some money in the FY '24 to do the detailed studies, and I have to remember that was one of the issues they were having. And the decision was made to, when the detailed studies are done, to do a full release of all of the map at that time. So we completed all of the revisions based off percolation rate of LiDAR and pipes missing and all of that other stuff. All that stuff is complete. As we finish the detailed studies in the '24 grant, then we're gonna basically do it all over again and have a complete map for that whole basin.
Okay, so it's coming then. Okay, thank you very much. All right, that's it. No questions for Hugh? Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Then, let's see, do I hear a motion to close our governing board meeting?
I make that motion, Madam Chair.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carried. If you want to, we'll take a break in between now and then we'll come back and do our workshop. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. So y'all need 15 minutes or 10? 11 o'clock, be back. Okay. We're ready. Everybody ready for our workshop? All right, thank you.
Good morning. I'm glad it's still morning for y'all.
Ma'am.
The Office of Land Management has had the honor today to present our district land management plan update that we've been working on for the last year. So a lot of hard work going into it by our team. It was last adopted by the board in 2018. So 2025 district land management plan revision was developed using the Florida statutes, the program directives, and the previous guidelines. The board approves the DLMP before it is implemented. So we're bringing it to you today for informational purposes. I'll be back in August for the official review and approval. The key changes between the 2018 and 2025 revision is that we did integrate the context of the Excellence in Land Management program into the land management and operations section. So it's all one plan instead of having two separate sections. And it directly presents our goals, our objectives, and adds metrics. And the metrics are key to us being able to provide quantifiable success. So the plan basically had 4 goals. We have added a 5th goal. So a little bit of rewording on some of them. So communications is now stakeholder engagement, but our 5th goal that we've added is road and hydrologic infrastructure. And we'll go through each of those individually. Starting with our natural resource protection, there was subcategories in the 2018 DLMP. We've revised those a little bit. We're still covering the context of what was there, but it's more defined into our actual programs. So vegetative management was added in lieu of ground cover resources, and invasive plant management was added instead of soils, topography, and natural communities. And we shortened our cultural resource title. So just trying to simplify, but clarity in them. So we'll dive into the water resources. Again, the context is the same. It's metrics that were added. I'm not showing you all the metrics today, but this is an example of one metric that was added. So it's the number of projects that are completed to reduce erosion near our springs, rivers, and waterways. And so that way we're able to quantify what we've done for the year. Our forest resources, we did our 2025 draft DLMP introduces objectives and metrics related to achieving the Florida Natural Areas Inventory, natural community descriptions, and so and maintaining diversity. So we did update one objective. That was being manage our forest resources for stand or landscape level diversity to help protect against catastrophic loss from environmental factors such as insects, disease, storms, and wildfire. And so in lieu of the hurricanes, that was an important one for us. And the metric that was added that goes along with that, so that again, there's several metrics, but choosing the one out of there to show you is acre ratios of young, intermediate, mature, and old growth timber stands. So that is how we plan on measuring our success. Veg management is in the 2018 DLMP, it covered vegetative management and fuel loading under the land management operations and facilities, but it didn't have any clear objectives and level of detail to it. So in the 2025 revision, we did update to where there are objectives and metrics focusing on maintaining our structurally diverse plant communities, disturbance intervals, ground cover restoration, and utilizing tools like our most important one, prescribed fire. And so the metric that I'm showing you here today on that is number of acres where prescribed fire is being successfully used as the main tool to maintain natural communities. Invasive plant management, again, not a lot of detail in the 2018 plan. We've broke it out with objectives and metrics. An example metric here, pretty straightforward, measurable, number of invasive plant surveys conducted. Rare species resources. Again, the 2018 DLMP had strategies for protecting and managing the biodiversity and identifying and monitoring rare species. Our 2025 plan adds the objectives and metrics for delineating natural plant communities, monitoring and surveying rare species populations, and maintaining and updating our GIS layers. And so the example metric here is the number of acres of natural plant communities delineated. Cultural resources. The 2025 draft DLMP includes objectives and metrics for monitoring significant sites, documenting new sites, monitoring looting sites, and providing the GIS layer files to our staff. In our land management office in particular, if somebody needs it for projects or so forth, we make sure that they're aware of sensitive areas. The example metric here is the number of known cultural resource looting sites monitored, the number of new sites located, and the number of sites reported to law enforcement. All right, that concludes our natural resource section. So now we're actually moving into a second goal, which is the road and hydrologic infrastructure. The 2018 DLMP addressed road and hydrologic facility management under its land management operations and facilities, but it didn't have a main goal with detailed objectives and metrics. So there is a new goal for this, and it's maintain road and hydrologic infrastructure on district lands to a level that successfully facilitates all resource protection and public use objectives. And again, this is new in the 2025 plan. It also has objectives for inspecting, maintaining, and repairing roads and hydrologic facilities, along with specific objectives for mowing and daylighting. And our metric that was added, one of them, is miles of public, secondary, and administrative road corridors that have been mowed. Public use, again, the context that was in the 2018 plan is the same. There's been some update to references for governing board directives that were updated over the last year. An example metric here is number of tracts or acres currently open to hunting, and number of tracts or acres of new hunting opportunities developed. Stakeholder engagement, like I said previously, it was called communications. The 2018 DLMP discussed the purpose of the land management review team and communication modes, but it lacked specific metrics. In our 2025 plan, we do have specific metrics that go beyond the land management review team, and it's like the number of alerts regarding district lands. As many of you are aware, online you're able to sign up for alerts. We put a lot out for land management activities like prescribed fires, track closures, and so forth. So we'll report that number of alerts directly related to land management. Fiscal responsibility. Again, the 2025 draft DLMP provides the same financial responsibility strategies. They're presented as objectives, and we added metrics for our objectives. And this is an example metric here. Document the opportunities pursued for revenue generation. Again, straightforward, measurable. There was 2 appendixes in the 2018 DLMP. We have streamlined Appendix A, which was the DFC table, and it is now, instead of all of the FNA communities, it's actually to our operational natural communities. So a little bit condensed. and easier to find the areas that we actually work in. We also had Appendix B, which listed all of our public use sites, and we've removed that so it doesn't quickly become outdated. It is available on our website, so we feel like that is the better location for people to look for public use activities. So that was removed. And that concludes our DLMP update for the board's informational purposes. Like I said, we plan to be back in August for a full review and approval. Is there any questions or?
Any questions from the board?
Yeah.
Okay.
How's the recovery coming from the storms? We got the, what we could salvage out of the dead trees and stuff like that.
So I was just informed this week that we are down to the last 200 acres of priority 1 salvage in the Steinhatchee Springs area. Beyond that, I do have Steve here if you need any more further detail. He's actively been working those salvage sales. It has slowed down some, but we are still trying to get as much as possible.
We're coming right back into above average season.
Another season.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? I've got a question. The road repair, I guess, section.
Mm-hmm.
Can you bring that slide back up for
Yes,
that
ma'am.
one? I think my only angst on the wording is that I know the district has miles and miles and miles of roads, and we've had that conversation before where for public use it's expected to be one way, and then there's other roads that really we don't really need to put a whole lot of money into them because it's really not available for public, or if it is, it's at your own risk kind of thing. And I would hope that that wording wouldn't say we're going to have all our district roads available for public use. I don't know how many miles of roads we've got, but I don't know whether we need to have something in there prioritizing certain roads for public use or.
I think our objectives, Madam Chair, actually probably speak to that better, because the objective for the public use, where we're allowing it, where it's not everywhere. It's sites that are conducive to getting to a point or location where they can do a recreational activity that is aligned with our operations.
So there is a way or a section that doesn't indicate that all of our roads will be available.
Correct.
Okay, that's fine. I don't think we can afford to do all our roads. And there's one other slide that showed the bee boxes.
The apiaries.
Yes, I wanted to bring that back for our board. There it is. I always wanted
there you
to
go.
see what.
I'm telling you,
That's what that is.
learn new things every day.
Oh dear.
That's apiary stuff
Yep,
right
there
there.
you go. All right. No other questions. That was very nice. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And I guess we'll see it back again in August.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other discussion from the board? Oh, so is there a motion to close our workshop?
I'll make that motion, Madam Chair.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. All righty. I think that concludes our business. And Robin? Okay. Okay. So if you want to take this opportunity to walk around and see the improvements that have been made to the building, that'd probably be a good time, or you can go to work.
That might be what we need to go do.